All right, boys, let's do this. Look at the cladogram to our right. We discussed some features that were going to be found in many of these critters. The first was the lack of true tissues and sponges separating them. And then as we get to here, we see true tissues. Moving further, as we move up, we're going to see radial symmetry in the cnidarians, and then we're not going to see that anywhere else. So that was important to note that we spent some time yesterday. Everything over on this side of the cladogram from here to here is going to have bilateral symmetry. That's interesting. What it should suggest to you is that these are the most successful creatures because they have the most diversity. This plan works. And then we get to talk about protostomes versus deuterostomes when we get there. All right. So eumetazoans are the true tissues. We find that with this star. And the bilaterians are these guys here. Bilateral, universal eumetazoans. So everything past this point has true tissues. There's one group that's radial with true tissues. Everything else is bilateral with true tissues. And it's important to note that we're going to use molecular data moving forward. This is what we're working from today. So the sponges, and what we're going to do here is create a list of the phyla. I think we're using the number 9 as we get forward and move towards a test. So what I want you to associate the phylum with a set of characteristics. Don't get too alarmed because I'll kind of go off into the future here and let you guys see there is a chart for this. And sponges, that's the characteristics, and sponges, right? But here, the cnidarians, and several examples. Let's use something you're familiar with. The 4 chordate characteristics that we're going to discuss. And then these are the individuals, which you'll know a lot more about by the time we get there. Move back. Right. That's where we need to be. Hope y'all are doing well today. So phylum Porifera, the pore bearers, they have pores. And we're going to see that in the next slide, or actually, this is it here. These are the pores we're talking about. You can call them holes or pathways into the individual. This is in cross-section as well, so we're not looking at the whole individual. You see on the outside that these guys are covered in pores. And they're so sedentary that you see here, the ancient Greeks thought they were plants. They weren't moving at all. They were just living underwater. They have to grab onto their environment. That's important. Mostly are going to live in marine environments, salt water, and they can be tiny, like this Scypha we see here. That's 1 to 3 centimeters. That's just over an inch on the large end. Or the purple tube sponge, represented by a 1.5 meter specimen over here. They get to be pretty big. 1.5 meters is around 5 feet. So that's a large creature. Some radially symmetrical, but most of them lack symmetry at all, so not even bilateral. Remember, we're off on this side of the presentation. We're up here, okay? So you can see no true tissues and no radial symmetry or no symmetry at all. Simple sponges, a sac with pores. Complex have some branching water canals. Of course, more complex, you would anticipate more evolved. 2 layers of cells separated by a gelatinous region. That's this little region here in blue. And they have these choanocytes, which actually pull water in through the body and push it around, and they kind of push it out. So water comes in this way and then leaves out through the top. That's could be related to ingestion. That's the way that they take their nutrients in, they filter it, and they release it out through the top. Okay. So they are suspension feeders, and that's important because they don't move. The water is suspending the molecules that pass through their body, and then they use something to trap that food. Sessile is the opposite of motile. It means they stay in place, can't get away from predators, so they have to have defense mechanisms that include antibiotics, disease-causing parasites, get rid of those, and even predators. So we can actually take information from these and develop antibiotics, things that kill other life. They are the simplest of all the animals based upon our description. There's no nerves or muscles, but they can react to changes in their environment. Their bodies do have reactionary cells, like saying that worms can't see light, but they have light sensing cells on their bodies that tell them which way is out of the soil. And their cell layers, even though they're layers of cells, you can still have layers of cells, but not be a true tissue. Cnidarians, yes, that C is stupid. Cnidaria. Hydras, jellies, sea anemones, and corals. All right, so you know jellyfish, I think you know sea anemone, you know corals. Hydras are probably something new for you, but that's this guy right here. That's a hydra. So the polyp form is this cylindrical body. It's got these tentacles that come off of it, and it's mostly stationary. The mouth is there on the top. And then the medusa form, this is what you're familiar with when it gets to jellyfish. Freely moving. Some can get, this is what the textbook says, 100 meters long. That's in the neighborhood of 330 feet, if my math is right, long. And then some of them can get up to 2 meters wide. That's just over 6 feet, right? It's 6.5 feet. So that's a big deal. These guys get pretty big. And what they do is they trap tentacles in the prey, and those tentacles will then bring the prey towards the mouth at the central location of the either the medusa or the hydra in that polyp form. Okay. They do have this gastrovascular cavity, which is a stomach with circulatory features that allow food and nutrients to travel throughout the body. But it doesn't have an exit for that, so it has to basically regurgitate its food. By closing its mouth, it can then change its shape, which then allows it to move through water. The stinging cells are called cnidocytes, and there's actually some of these, the larger ones, that can capture and kill fish. And then this one's pretty awesome. Australia's got some crazy stuff. But off the coast of Australia, this guy, the sea wasp, can kill 60 people with one. It's got enough poison to kill 60 people in one individual. And then coral, they actually secrete that skeleton that allows them to build the coral reefs. So we see it pictured here. That's the sea wasp. And then this is kind of the way the cnidocyte works. There's a tentacle, and off the end of that is a little trigger. And then it shoots out this extension, which then grabs Patrick on the head. Yeah. Flatworms. I wonder what these could be. Worms that are flat. The best part about these is the descriptive phylum name. That's Platyhelminthes. Simplest of all creatures that are bilateral. Let's go back. Right here. Flatworms. Protostomes. These the mouth forms first. They're bilateral and they have true tissues. So Platyhelminthes, 1 millimeter to as much as 20 millimeters. I wish I could say I was making this stuff up, guys, but it's pretty doggone remarkable. 20 meters long from 1 millimeter. That's a huge difference. I mean, that type of difference is rarely found in creatures. Like if you look at the smallest mammal is in the neighborhood of an inch long, half-inch long. The largest mammal is a blue whale. So this is a pretty big gap, right? So 3 major groups. So one of the pleasures of quarantine is when people unexpectedly come home or unexpectedly walk into the room or unexpectedly do a number of things that interrupt the video, and you try to remember where the hell you were when you left off. I'm pretty sure I said free living or one of the forms of planarians. Go away. So, a head, as you see here, pair of eyes, eye spots. These are all important characteristics. We're becoming a little bit more complex here, right? Nerve cells forming a simple brain, gastrovascular cavity, right? This is really good for diffusion of molecules, right? But what the hell is this? There's a mouth midships. There's literally a mouth on its belly. Nature, man. You don't ever know what the hell's going to happen. They live under rocks and freshwater streams and ponds. So just think, stagnant environments in the cases of those ponds and rainfall runoff. Maybe some streams. They're just there. Okay, they're doing their thing. Cilia for movement, so don't think of a big undulating form. They have hairs on the underside of their bodies. Uh, think something along the lines of a leech, even though we're about to cover leeches. They're not here, but they do have muscles and they do move. Flukes are another type of flatworm. And I mean, this looks like sci-fi crap here. Some of the stuff we're going to cover this chapter is absolutely remarkable in its ability to threaten your psyche. So these are parasites, otherwise known as assholes. Use suckers to attach to the host. They stick on. Complex life cycle, and they end up having an intermediate host, which means they get to infect a carrier. That's also ironic with what we're talking about now. I guess I should say coincidental. These guys get their crap into a host, and the host carries it around. And here you go. Look, blood flukes infect humans, live in snails, and sometimes we can step on the snails or ingest the snails, and we end up getting this crap in our bodies. Similar to the way a tapeworm works, parasitic invertebrate digestive tract, like I said, assholes, right? Different from the planarians and the flukes because they have a segmented body plan. That's interesting because if you try to pull one of these guys out of your gut and it breaks, it's not dead. You just got the other piece. It's terrible. They feed through their body surface. That's important because these can grow a meter, 2 meters long in the digestive system, latch on with these sucker hooks. I told you this is out of a horror flick, and then absorb food throughout their bodies as they live in our intestines. That sounds remarkable. Sign me up. I think nematodes is where I should probably kill it today based upon time. So this will be our last two slides. Nematodes, phylum nematode, that's an easy one to remember. These are roundworms, and you're thinking round, is that more simple? Well, no, it's more complex. Fluid-filled body cavity, digestive tract with 2 openings. Oh, wow, that's awesome. It's got 2 openings now. That's important. Cylindrical with a blunt head, tapered tail, 1 millimeter up to a meter, so these guys can get pretty big. They're tough. Got this cuticle on the outside. We talked about cuticles in plants with the stomata, waxy cuticle holding in the moisture, stomata releasing it. This cuticle forms the same sort of barrier. 25,000 species. That's more than the mammals and the reptiles. And if I check myself, the amphibians put together, maybe even the birds. Birds, 12, 14,000 species. We can go check these facts. Fishes are like 24,000 species. So there's more of these types of suckers than there are fish. And then there's estimates of 500,000. Worms that live in rotting organic matter decompose. So all that sounds gross except for that decomposition piece. That's critical. We need this to recombine the nutrients that grew into organisms back into the soil, and that's our carbon nitrogen cycle. Really important to the way the earth thrives. But there's parasitic bastards too. Plants and animals. Some of these get up to 7 meters long, live in whales. Gross. Heartworms are these roundworms, cats and ferrets. Vectors, again, talking about vectors. Spread by mosquitoes in the blood, eggs in the blood. They bite one individual, bam, next individual gets infected. We, as humans, 7.4 billion strong, thereabouts, though that number's dwindling right now with this virus, 50 species of roundworms, so they're a successful group. It's not a huge number of species, but there are 50 of them, and that sounds like a success to me. Trichinella is something I believe that we can pick up in our food. It might be from pigs. We have to look at that one. And then worms and humans, undercooked pork or game. Let's look up trichinella as we come to a close on this one. Trichinella. Viviparous nematode. We're going to talk about that later. We actually did that in Bio 1, so we already covered this. Rodents, pigs, bears. Here, there's the pigs. Hyenas, humans responsible for trichinosis, sometimes referred to as the porkworm, undercooked pork. Okay, good. So we covered that. This is them here. Just dirty little boogers, man. So that's going to kill it for today. We'll talk about mollusks, which these are important because we eat them. Later.